and welcome to New Game Plus for another week. My name is Donald, and I'm joined by Meg this week. How are you?
Hey, I'm really good. It's almost Christmas. It's the best time of year.
Yes, it is early December, but it's never too early to talk about Christmas. At least it's never too early to start putting up Christmas decorations.
The countdown is on.
Every supermarket ever.
Yeah, there's jingles in the supermarkets. Damn it.
Yep, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, it really is. But like with Christmas, usually comes, well, Santa sometimes delivers the best in gaming. Like, were you ever lucky enough to get a console under the tree?
I definitely was. I got a Nintendo 64 back when I was a kid, but when I
Were you the actual N64 kid?
I was a sister. It was a little boy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
I felt like I was there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of kids are going to be super excited with the Switch this year. What do you think?
I think a lot of kids this year, they'll be more content with Fortnite bucks than they will with an actual console. Having said that, though, there are plenty of little mini gadgets and options, like with the PlayStation Mini, the Nintendo Minis, which are still available in stock, and of course the Nintendo Switch.
Nice. When I grew up a bit older, my parents made me use all my pocket money that I'd save throughout the year to buy the next Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
It was definitely worth it.
No, that was me when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
I had to scrimp all my Christmas and all my birthday monies to buy me a Game Boy and a Tetris. It felt super rewarding to have that, but at the same time, maybe Santa could have been a bit more generous. Do
you have any?
Just maybe.
Now they're all a bit older. Do you have any annual leave, and are you going to play any games while you're on break?
Oh, that's always the plan, is to try and do as much nothing as possible and to try to catch up on my games. Having said that, I usually just sleep in and just rewatch the same YouTube videos. You?
Oh yeah, definitely. About the same. I can't wait. Forced leave is the bomb.
Yes, but that's all in a couple of weeks from now. But for now, we've got a whole episode of New Game Plus. We have a review of Call of Cthulhu and Mega Man 11.
Yes, and we also talk about Dota 720 with Shane and Jason, who are fanboying about the latest patch.
Fanboying, yelling at each other, whatever. We also take a look at the Assassin's Creed franchise, what it was, what it's become. Big episode this week, so let's get straight into it.
Enjoy, guys.
Now, if you were to ask me to think of the first terrifying idea to pop into my mind, I'd immediately say the mental image of Jason in a pair of bathers. If you asked me about the second most terrifying thing, I'd probably go with succumbing to madness. And what better way to simulate losing your marbles with the appropriately timed release of Call of Cthulhu on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or PC? Developed by Cyanide Studio, a French developer who has had a reputable history in pen and paper RPG to game adaptations, Call of Cthulhu follows the tale of Edward Pierce, a down-on-his-luck private investigator fresh from the Great War, who was sent to the quiet little fishing town of Darkwater to investigate and clear the name of his client's daughter, who was accused of murdering herself along with her family in a sea of flames. And as with most works based on Lovecraft, this town isn't exactly what it seems, and malignant forces await Edward to punish his inquisitive nature. Now, a lot of Edward's detective skills are put to the test in some really nice environmental design and architecture. The areas explored are all dilapidated and neglected, reflecting the mental state of Darkwater's inhabitants and absolutely nailing the tone that most Call of Cthulhu games like Prisoner of Ice or Shadow of the Comet has completely missed. And as such, it offers a much better perspective on how humanity would respond to horrifying creatures invading reality from other worlds. Audio cues tend to blend in with the overworld sounds, so as your character becomes more unhinged throughout the game, you're constantly second-guessing if you've found trespassing by a guard, you come across an important item, or if that high-pitched ringing in the distance belongs to something that wants to eat your face off. And whether or not those little details were intentional on the developer's part, it still works considering the subject matter at hand. Though if we are speaking intentional design, Edward may be a war veteran, but he still prefers to solve matters diplomatically. And if you're expecting gameplay along the stylings of Dark Corners of the Earth, where it's a bit more shooter-centric, you're going to feel very left out. The majority of progression through Call of Cthulhu is through dialogue, skill checks, and investigation, which is where most of the pen and paper mechanics kick in. Upgrading Edward as you investigate and level up allows you to affix skill points into extra dialogue paths, picking locks, forcing doors open, finding hidden items, and plenty more. Some skills can only be increased by investigating environmental factors like, consulting medical books, or even texts of the occult like the Necronomicon, which often come at the cost of the character's sanity and how he approaches some decisions later on in the game. Unfortunately, the integration of these pen and paper mechanics are fairly shallow, as most investigative sequences unlock most of the useful dialogue options, and the stat exclusive options merely serve as flavor text. Spots where you can do a strength skill check to force open a drawer can be solved through finding a key in the room next door. So the payoff of investing in a particular build or a particular aspect of Edward never really seems worth it in the long run. So thankfully investigating and the stealth sections are far more interesting, as each scene just thrusts you into a diorama that changes frame by frame as you interact with it, while sneaking and peeking around assailants works as well as it needs to. And that said, for all the praise I've made about the presentation so far, it can be quite inconsistent thanks to some of the strangely animated character models, a fair amount of typing errors in the subtitling, and really jarring switches between full motion video and scenes rendered in real time. And it can really drag you out of what is a pretty immersive game for its scope and budget. Despite that, there are certain attentions to detail I found absolutely masterful, like triggering Edward's shell shock and PTSD if you stay in closets or tiny vents for too long, or if you're looking directly at creatures and it reduces your overall sanity level. And while I may seem totally conflicted here, but I'd still say Call of Cthulhu is worth checking out. While it is pretty rough around the edges, I don't consider my time with it as a negative experience because it manages to hit tones and thematic notes that other cosmic horror-themed games have yet to match. So if you're looking for a scare, I can guarantee it's just as terrifying as visualizing Jason in a pair of bathers. Oh God. Oh God, I stared into the abyss and it's staring right back at me. Oh my God.
Now, we've recently had the Kuala Lumpur Major. Congratulations to Virtus Pro for beating Team Secret. And that was very exciting. People were very excited to see the Kuala Lumpur Major. Great fun to watch. But you know what people are really hanging for? The end of 7.19 Dota patch. Because goddamn, if I see another Terrorblade or a PL, I'm going to be physically ill. It makes me physically sick to think about that. 7.2 comes out. Shane, how excited are you for 7.2? Because it's a new game.
Honestly,
Dota 6.
Yes, but honestly, like bringing up the Terrorblade and PL,
Still
they're
good.
They're still good. But I honestly, I enjoyed the way Ice Frog changed in this patch.
Yes.
But like the things that he did were changed the game in the sense that the maps changed, like a few other things.
Tangential nerfs. As
Yeah.
not direct nerfs, tangential nerfs.
No, it's not even that. It's more that it's better because he buffed other heroes.
Yes,
He didn't go, okay, these heroes need to be nerfed. He goes, let's bring up these other heroes to maybe add more counters to the pool.
And that's what I mean. More so than necessarily he went directly and said, I'm going to cut down this cooldown, I'm going to cut this. He said, let's raise all the other boats, and then by default, they're not as good as they once were because they're not the instant game winners that they once were. Because now Slark's scary again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've got Slark, we've got a few other heroes that are pretty strong, including Dazzle. But we've also got
How
a
good
few.
is Dazzle?
Dazzle's pretty strong. But we've also got a few other changes, including denies do not ever give XP anymore to the denier.
Which was always that thing of then you would have people vying over XP. And then we had this issue where you were still being a little bit poor because like you were getting XP but no gold from them.
It was actually, I think it was more that it just 100% made lanes 100% needed to be either A, even, or you needed to win them. And if you won them, you dominated early game.
And that would be, I would reckon, why they brought tomes in the first place, because they knew that was going to be a thing where, well, because I mean, you have to catch up on those levels sometimes. Like you get some supports and it's a very sad life.
I think that was more for the support game. Tomes are a different issue than this. I think this is that, like, that was more that he wanted to change the roaming style. He wanted to change how lanes were played. And it really did change that. And now it's gone from giving XP to now gold, which honestly, it changes a few things, but I still think that lanes are actually still really, really important.
They are, but I don't think it's quite as straightforward as 2-1-2, because 7-1-9 was the 2-1-2 meta. I've seen a couple of trailers and I've seen them work reasonably well, like, but it's still not. It's still very lane dominant, like lane dependent. You need to have a good lane to do well in the game. But with the changes to movement speeds, a movement speed meta in a big way, like everything gives extra movement speed now.
I'd say it's actually weirder though, because like agility heroes, you see them move much, much faster. But every other hero, because like movement speed items are now just percentiles, if you don't actually have a hero with like fast movement speed on base, you're going to have an issue because everything is like buffs. By increasing your base like movement speed. So if
So
you're a
the-
slow hero, you're always going to be a slow hero.
Yes, yeah. And that is kind of the issue. Whereas, yeah, you're right. You're not changing the base numbers in a similar way that damage works in Dota, where like your base damage is affected by your stats. So you know, if it's a percentage of base damage, you want to build stat items as opposed to building direct damage items.
There's a few other things that I really want to bring up as well. Like Ogre's change, I really
You
love.
really love Ogre, yep.
So basically, he can now multicast on items.
Yes, offensive items.
Offensive items, which is basically every item that targets a unit or hero.
Dagon,
Midas. Like, I'm just gonna stop you on Midas because multicasting Midas is the best A feeling ever, and B, it's so good.
So much gold, yeah.
Like,
because so you go from what? It's 200 gold, is it? No, 160 gold.
I think it's like 200 or 180. I think. But
And then is the XP bonus still attached?
yes, there's still an XP bonus
So
attached.
you 400 gold in one use, and the XP bonus.
That's if you multicast twice. You can then, if you get to level 12, multicast 3 times, and then 18, multicast 4 times. So you can literally take out a full camp by yourself, just Midas, bang.
Yeah.
And
Chum,
that's
chum,
like
chum. Yep.
1,000 gold almost straight
Yep.
up there. Like, I think you'll see a lot of supports going, like, changing from
Full
support-
position ogres, like
Yeah.
they're transitioning.
There's going to be a lot more heroes transitioning, and I think it'll be really, really nice to see that in the meta. It changes a few strategies as well, I think.
I would say one of the things, and you mentioned how games are going to go quicker. I think, if anything, a lot of the changes actually transition a lot of supports into scaling into the late game really well. Like Dazzle obviously is really good across the board, but that negative armor as it goes on gets better and better. Lion getting a tick of damage every time he kills someone with finger or is involved in the kill. Like Ogre, now he's suddenly a scary, because that was the thing. Once you got to like 40 minutes, Ogre was a minion, like he was a creep with stun.
And even then, like even Bane or Rubik, who's had both two changes to, I think, basically a new concept with negative
static resistance.
Negative static
So
resistance.
stuns will last up to 60% longer.
So yeah, that's actually changing a lot of things because like you can go, a Beast Master into with a like Bane, just throw that spell and you're stunned for like 6 seconds.
And then you use Enfeeble.
And
use Grip, so it's 20 seconds.
So it's about 20 seconds. And then by that time, Nightmare's back up if you've casted Nightmare on first initiate.
One last thing I think we should mention before we go, and stop me if you think I'm wrong. It really does seem like they are pushing strength carries in this meta over a lot of other like heroes. It seems like a lot of the strength carries, and whether that's just to keep up with now how well agi carries are, but like it seems like a lot of good strength heroes suddenly got buffed into the late game.
Yes and no. There's a few interesting ones. Chaos Knight's change, which kind of changed his randomness
He
a little bit.
sucks early, but he's better later.
Oh, no, actually.
Oh, it's the other way around.
I know,
yeah.
it's not even that. I think like he's just been more consistent.
Yeah.
He's got a bit less random. His stun's still random, but like there's a few things here that I think have really changed the style that like you'll see a lot more new strategies, I think.
Having to relearn yourself is going to be so much fun. And I played 8 games last night, and having to relearn how to play Dota has been great fun. I'm enjoying it.
Just don't play Carry Bound now, please. Please.
Carry Dazzle. So Assassin's Creed is one of those franchises that has been around for many, many years now. This is the funny part. You got to think about it. This was like Xbox 360. Whoa, like
It was like original 360, like almost second year
Yeah, I
game
think
of the
it was
first.
yeah.
Like Assassin's Creed, the original game, it did a lot of cool things in the back in the days.
It was one of those things where it came out and it was like, hey, here's this new way of making these kind of open world games. We're going to do it. But it was, a buggy mess, which is true about all of them. It was obviously a little bit underpolished, and the story sucked, right? And what's his name? Oh, what was the guy's name?
Desmond or
no? Desmond sucked. Like again, this is the worst part of Assassin's Creed, right? Is they brought in this overarching sci-fi narrative. I think they needed to play it straighter. That's always been my biggest complaint about Assassin's Creed.
Okay, I actually enjoyed the whole overarching narrative of like
course you
Desmond's.
did.
No, it's more that like it had like these elements of like different gods and interacting and like how they transformed.
Jupiter and Juno and stuff like that.
Those were cool elements to how basically the Romans stole the Greek gods and just changed the names, stuff like that. Like it actually changed.
Except for the fact that Desmond had the personality of a wet frog.
Sure, but I think his character kind of came through Ezio pretty well. Like he had, I think it kind of changed him, and you can notice that change. Ezio's change and his
But
change.
I mean, Ezio's still so number 2, which is
Yes.
Assassin's
The-
Creed 2.
the-
Ezio Auditore di Firenze, right? The best character in the series, hands down,
and probably the best game in the
is.
series. Like,
and there are some. This is the thing. As much as we're discussing straight away the fatigue of the series, there are some very good games in the series.
Yes.
Like I would argue 2, 4, even Brotherhood was okay.
okay, I'd argue that Brotherhood's maybe even better than 2. Like, it reached its points.
As a game, I think it's a better game, but as a story-driven experience, I don't think it's quite as good because it is more of a straightforward game. You know what I mean? Like, it's more gamey. It's more of that Ubisoft too much shit to do kind of game.
There was that, but I think that I also liked the elements of like this impending doom that they actually talked about, and and it really built up what 3 was going to be. And then there was Revelations, and nobody played that game, and nobody liked that game, and everyone wants to talk about that game.
Yes, and let's not. So we've covered 1, and the issue. So that was the thing. 1 reminded me a lot of Mass Effect. There's a great concept under this.
Yeah.
Can they deliver on it? Number 2, yes, they fucking can apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Broho, great game, like such a good game. And then the decline sets in because they start doing them yearly and they start fatiguing the team behind them.
That's interesting that you bring up Mass Effect, because like it almost does follow Mass Effect except for number 2 and 3. Like
except
the
2 and 3
descent,
Mass Effect
the
sucks.
descent started
Mass Effect
earlier.
sucks after 1.
Yeah, the
like,
descent started earlier.
Like Mass Effect 1 promises a universe that never gets delivered on. Assassin's Creed 1 promises a universe that almost doesn't get delivered on, and then 2 and Broho deliver on most of it.
And then we get 3, which.
So you can see what they were trying to do with 3, right? But the problem that they faced with 3, and this is where the rot started to set in, they started to ignore the context of the time frame that they were in. You can't get controversial with the Americans. People still love the founding fathers, and they love to pretend that slavery doesn't exist. They love to pretend that Native Americans didn't get pushed off the land. SJW time over. But point is, he was a half Native American assassin, as if he's going to suddenly be at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. As if they're even going to let him in the goddamn building. Like, they're not even going to let him near that, right? But they Forrest Gumped him in anyway. And that was always the advantage and disadvantage of Assassin's Creed. Forrest Gumping the main character into these situations. And it doesn't make sense once you get to 4.
And
sorry, 3.
And even then, like, 3 gameplay-wise, I think it dropped a lot of balls. Like, the glitchiness amount of 3 comparative to nearly all the other ones.
Yeah, because the other ones were like kind of like, haha, it's a harmless glitch, or I just got to restart the mission. Some of these glitches, like, that was so painful.
Yeah.
And you could tell that they tried to go out of their way to animate Connor differently. Like, he was a big thug, and and his fighting style was different, and all that matched. But then suddenly, like, people would, like, that's when the real kind of glitches and the rot started to set in for that. Then we got the Breath of Fresh Air that was 4. Because that was Black Flag, which to me really isn't an Assassin's Creed game.
And also, the 3 ended the, Desmond story. So
did,
that's
yes,
why you
quite
had
literally,
you had the Breath of Fresh Air because Desmond's dead. Oh wait, sorry, spoilers.
Yeah, lol, spoilers.
And also like the whole ending of the world.
But they still do that though. They still, like, in a lot of the other ones, you're at Abstergo and you're going around their offices, or you're like, they play up the video game company thing in later things where it's like, oh, we're trying to extract all the DNA we can out of people.
But it feels weaker. Like, if we're going further from that series, if we're going even further than from 4 and stuff, the actual character outside of the game is
much weaker.
Much weaker, and you don't even really care about it.
And I didn't care enough about Desmond, but then it gets worse and worse as it goes out because you are just some random, like, faceless random. You know what I mean? It's always first person. It's always being spoken to as if you're a mute. Like, it's got the Zelda problem.
Yeah. Well, like, that was the series of the French, and then we had the English.
So we had Unity, and Unity was the next one. And Unity's biggest issue was it was so glitchy. Like, we discussed it before, but the rot really set in there because the setting is ripe for it. I mean, this is pre-revolution France. I love the setting. Playing it in French made it a better game.
And then we had also, like, pre the release of that, we had that, like, multiplayer co-op trailer. Remember the hype on that?
Yeah.
That was so hype. And then it did deliver.
Yes. And this was the thing, because the Assassin's Creed multiplayer is one bit that gets overlooked. And it's a solid concept, but then they just rehashed it in every version of it, which was fine because, I mean, you were playing Assassin's Creed for the story, but then the stories got weaker. And it's not even necessarily that they didn't nail the settings, they didn't nail that. It just became, I'm going to do the same things. I'm going to chase after the guy. It's not actually a stealth game, even though it kind of purports to be. I'm going to jump off a roof and stab a guy. I'm going to play the tedious one-button counter fighting. Yeah.
So let's go even further from that. Like, Syndicate was another one that's kind of like...
It was decent, but...
It was decent, but it didn't really change much the game. 3-year gap after that, basically, I think.
Was 2 or 3, yeah.
2 or 3 year gap. This is when we get the actual change of the gameplay.
Yes.
We get Origin. Origin it doesn't even go into like action adventure. It changes to more almost like RPG, action RPG.
Yeah.
And the game shifts with that. And honestly, for the better or worse, is actually up to opinion. Because while I enjoy action RPGs, it's one that I felt that just, it didn't hit all the levels.
This was when we were coming into the age of Ubisoft do too much shit games, right?
Yeah.
So we're coming into this age where Far Cry, it's like, go liberate the forts, go liberate this, go liberate that, blah, 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 blah. We get to that issue where it's like, great, there's just too much stuff to do. None of it's building the character, none of it's building that interesting. But this was also an era of Skyrim, you know what I mean? Which is literally the definition of that kind of game.
And it kind of builds that kind of choose your own adventure, which I honestly think is like one of the worst things when you don't actually have a character who cares.
Comparing that to Red Dead Redemption, not to be that guy, but Red Dead Redemption 2 does that fantastically.
So Odyssey, it steps it up a lot more, but it's interesting to see the changes overall.
Dumps more mechanics on, dumps on leveled up characters, which they've there's bits they've taken from The Witcher, and there's bits they've taken from God of War, and there's bits they've taken from this, and bits they've taken from that. And they put it all together into this melange, and yep, it's cool, and it's got all these cool things that you can do, but we are kind of going back into that thing where it's like, okay, well now we're doing the same kind of thing over and over again. So I wonder, I wonder if the 2-year gaps are starting to work for it, because at least we're not fatigued on it. At least it's like, well, Origins was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Now this is Odyssey, and it's a thing. I mean, the other thing as well is you've got the 2 different characters, male and female. But if the dialogue doesn't change based on that, I mean, what's the point of being 2 different? It's literally just a model.
It's the same as the choose your own adventure. Like, you build the character, but in a sense, you don't actually have any control of the character at all.
Correct. Yeah.
There is no actually character development. It's all preset for you.
If you're going to do that, you need to be really delicate with it.
Yeah.
Again, not to raise too much of a point on it, Red Dead Redemption does that very, very well. I know, right? But my argument would be Assassin's Creed, it's actually in a decent spot, I think, at the moment, even if the game style doesn't necessarily appeal to me in the way that the old ones did when I first played them. Your mileage may vary, my favourite saying, but it really is that thing of the changes are for better or worse. This is more of an RPG than it's ever been before, leveling up, like a bunch of loot cycles. Reminds me a lot of what Darksiders did, where it went from Zelda to Diablo.
Yeah.
And this is going a little bit Diablo.
It's going to be interesting where it goes from here, though.
Assassin's Creed. Used to be so good.
Yeah, I haven't played it since about Black Flag.
That's probably for the best.
I'm pretty glad that Jason and Shane were talking about that one.
I'm glad they took the bullet for that one and not us.
What I really find interesting, though, is where do you draw the line of, as a franchise, where for every installation, not changing it too much to disturb the hardcore fan base, but changing it enough to keep it fresh and bring in new players and new fans?
Like, you almost have to go with the extremes on this one. Like, there are some series that have managed to change things up entirely, but still managed to maintain, like, a through-line identity. As in, I think of primarily of Persona, that franchise. Persona 1 and 2 are very different games to what Personas 3 through 5 became.
Sure.
But once 3 came around, they kept that same core of high school drama and monsters, but they changed everything around it. They changed the wrapping, and as a result, they managed to breathe new life into that franchise.
That's super exciting. And don't forget Monster Hunter. That's a game that stayed tried and true in every like installation they've ever released.
That's the other extreme as well. Like, it's again, like, it's almost as if they nailed exactly from day one what they wanted in that franchise, and they just managed to just keep on doing that. Maybe have some more quality of life improvements, but ultimately, people just want a monster.
That's true. And also like Pokemon, that's another one that's really stuck to its guns, but dabbled in things like Pokemon Go and the live patches where they can really dabble and experiment with things that are really successful and then integrate them into new installations like Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, we're still playing that game a lot to this. I'm just going to do that right. No,
I know you're pretty keen. I mean, we're almost done here.
I want.
It'll be
No, Let's Go is a very good game. I saw your review.
Thanks, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
Really fun.
and you can watch that review on our website at www.newgameplus.tv.
Check it out. Also on our new Instagram page, Twitter, our website, and YouTube.
That is all at New Game Plus TV, one word, no spaces. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining me this week, Meg.
Thanks, John. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you, and we'll see you next week.